The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everybody to this complimentary webinar that today I am going to present all together with Caroline Nichols from RAS. Before we start this really interesting presentation on permit to work systems, lead process safety metrics, I would like to kindly inform you that the webinar is recorded and it will be available on our platforms, the website, the YouTube channel. So those of you who have already following our work and our webinars, you know exactly where to find these presentations, but I will remind you in the end of the presentation as well. During the presentation, feel free to add your questions and comments in the chat box or question box, whichever appear in your system, because I would like to see your comments, and I would like to get your ideas around what is your experience with permit to work system, whether you like this new idea about collecting potentially process safety metrics, whether they can be implemented in your operation, and so on. So I leave this quite interactive, so feel free to address your questions. If I forget something, then Caroline is here to help me out, so that I'm really happy about. We are your presenters today. My name is Dr. Susanna Gyenes, and I am the Deputy to the Director of the IChemE Safety Center. And here with me, Caroline. Caroline, please.
Thanks, Susanna. Morning, all. I won't bore you with too much about me, but just a brief introduction. I'm Caroline Nichols, Operations Director for RAS Limited. Been working in process safety for 16 years. RAS are members of the IChemE Safety Centre, and we're really enjoying taking part in working groups such as the one that helped put together this guidance. We're also working on a piece on alarm rationalisation at the moment. As well as that, I'm also Secretary for the IChemE's Safety and Loss Prevention SIG. So keen interest in all things process safety. Thanks, Susanna.
Fantastic, Caroline. Thank you so much. You may know me. I've been involved in process safety like for 19 or 20 years, as far as I can remember. And I would like to welcome everybody again. So let's jump into the topic about permit to work systems. But before that, I would like to show you, we are really proud because the IChemE Safety Center has representations, as you can see, in all continents basically. And we have so many organizations joined us, operating partners, industry partners, and universities and regulators, which is really important for us. And that's why we are very proud to present our members, partners in our slides, in every forum, in every presentation. And I know that so many of you are here today with us, and I appreciate your interest in this topic. Here you can see our supporting partners, all the universities we are working together, and some of the regulators. And I think it's really important that we share the knowledge on process safety and try together to improve process safety, because we take that process safety is not a competition, it is a collaboration. Now, what I would like to highlight is, because it's important from the aspect of the guidance document on permit to work systems, is that the IChemE Safety Center works around a framework. Now, this is the framework for process safety. I'd like to highlight that this is not a process safety management system, doesn't even seek to become one, but this is a structured way how we, with our members, address process safety. So as you can see here, we have these elements: systems and procedures, engineering and design, assurance, knowledge and competence, human factors, and culture. And what is important is that everything, all the elements, are underpinned with one really crucial point, which is, you can see, leadership. So you have to have leadership in all of the areas. So this is what we believe in, and this is how we structure all the guidance documents and all the publications that we publish for our members and for everybody else, because our guidance documents are free to everyone. I will give you a proper introduction to those in the end of the presentation. But let's discuss first, why process safety leading metrics? Why is it so important? The ISC with the member groups developed this idea and guidance document that we need leading metrics because apparently we have so many publications out there on lagging metrics, accidents data, near misses, incidents, and so on. All the learnings from those events are available so that we can establish a very good system where we can identify, measure lagging metrics. However, our member companies discovered back in the 2015 that actually there is a lack of consistency in development of process safety leading metrics. So that's why the ISC developed, together with the members, a set of leading process safety metrics. And what is interesting about it, that it is not only applied for one type of industry, but it is applied across various industries. And we apologies, we tested the system basically because our members are coming from completely different areas, different industries, different practice, different day-to-day basis of application of different procedures and applying different metrics, and they put together all the knowledge and experience to this to the guidance document, and that's why it has become really important for all industries. And it is a guidance document that can be implemented right away. I will show you how. Why we need to focus on leading side. It is better to understand how the system works, whether we all follow all the procedures, whether there is all the required information available, and looking for when things go right instead of, or rather, preferably than when they go wrong. Now, okay, leading process safety metrics are not predicting the future, but they actually give quite a good overview about the system. So that's why they are important. I think that we all know this, but sometimes we have to remind ourselves that why do we measure and what do we measure? Do we know the purpose of the measurement? Whether we are able and willing to challenge the green results? Caroline will give you a little bit more on that aspect a little bit later on. So that's why I think it's important, and we all know that it's important to focus on leading metrics. So, as you remember, in many of the prime examples of past incidents, there was a confusion around that the company measured metrics, and they were really happy about the results. However, then they suffered a really, really massive industrial accident, and then they realized that what they were measuring actually was something related to occupational health and safety rather than process safety. So that's why I'd like to show you this slide that gives some hints around what is the difference between occupational health and safety, process safety metrics, metrics, and process safety metrics. And a couple of examples of those barriers in place. So they can be different from each other. Sometimes they are the same, but many times these are different. And I gave you some of the examples on the bottom of the slide, such as working at height is occupational health and safety, hydrocarbon piping is process safety. In some occasions, they are quite similar or the same. Now, I mentioned that the ISC with all the member companies published the first guidance document on lead process safety metrics in 2015. And it is available as all the rest of our guidance documents for free to download from our website. So in this guidance document, the companies agreed on to identify 21 lead metrics. And I will present you all of them, because this is how because that is important to understand what was the aspect, what was the reasoning behind. So, and then when it was published, there were some metrics that the companies thought, all right, this is good, but we may need some more detailed information about how to implement and what does it mean, what does this metric mean, or what does it measure. So they came up with the idea that we need supplementary guidance documents. And so the first supplementary guidance document was published in 2019, focused on managing pressure relief devices. Of course, it is also available to download. This is a shorter version, obviously, than the original guidance document, and it focuses on specifically pressure relief device design and operational performance requirements. If this is something that you would like to measure or you missed the information about, please feel free to check this document. And as Caroline had kindly mentioned, we are now working on alarm rationalization, and hopefully we will be working on audits as well in the close and in the future. I don't have the image just yet about this current guidance document on permit to work systems because it haven't been published yet, but it will be published in March. And but that's why we wanted to give you the information about what it is about, because I think it's really good to see what's coming up. So the original guidance document identified two metrics related to permit to work systems. One was permit to work checks performed to plan, and the other one was permit to work non-conformance. And that's those were the two the two metrics based on we continued working and established a new guidance document and elaborated it more based on these two metrics. However, apparently we have identified much more metrics related to permit to work systems in the end. And remember that I mentioned a framework, and it's important to mention again because all the metrics sit within the framework of the iChemist Safety Center. How these metrics are defined, because they are defined based on a structure. So first of all, we have the title of the metrics, and this is, I'm talking about now about the general guidance document, where we have identified the 21 metrics, and among those the two permit to work system metrics. So there is the generic term for the metric, and then a purpose actually focuses on what behaviors and what decisions the metric should inform across all levels in the organization. And also it provides the context for why the metric is important and worth tracking. Remember, I mentioned already that it's really important to think about why is it a metric for us? What does it give us about what information it provides about the system? And then it follows by the description. So that gives the essence of how to measure the data, how to normalize the data, and the suggested metric result or trend to show improvement and frequency of data capture and analysis. And then the consolidation is about how the metric can be consolidated for higher level reporting or broken it down for more specific information. For example, from site to corporate reporting. And the implementation speaks about the challenges to implementing the metrics and suggestions on how these may be overcome. And of course, we have the linkages because this section ties the metrics back together and highlights also where there may be linkages with other elements in this guidance. So the 21 metrics. The first one around knowledge and competence under the element of knowledge and competence is about like ensuring the workforce has the relevant awareness and familiarity to understand the impact of their actions, as well as the ability to perform tasks consistently on a sustainable basis. So this is the metric is identified under knowledge and competence. Conformance with process safety related role competency requirement. And we also have series of publications on competency framework among our guidance documents. And then the next element under the framework is engineering and design. Under this, these are the elements that are identified as metrics related to engineering and designs. Engineering and design is about applying the hierarchy of controls in the design and engineering of equipment and safety systems. It includes the concept of inherently safer design as a starting point. And this area focuses on monitoring the health of the hardware barriers across the facility. So the safety critical equipment related functions, the deviations, the short-term deviation, open management of change, demand on the safety critical element, and barriers failing on demand. The next one is the element of systems and procedures. It's about having high-level management systems in place, be that safety, maintenance, or other management systems, setting a standard to be adhered to. And here you can find the two metrics that I have mentioned before that we elaborated more in this particular permit to work system guidance document. So here you can see permit to work checks performed to plan and permit to work non-conformance. Now, permit to work checks performed to plan is a metric that monitors the number of checks done on the permit to work system. Meanwhile, permit to work non-conformance is a metric that monitors the quality. So one is quantitative and the other one is qualitative. The quality of the permit to work and gives an indication of how effective the permit to work system is. For example, highlighting if there are isolation, handover, hazard identification issues, and so on. And here you can see other elements. The next element is assurance, and under assurance we have identified two metrics. Assurance, what is assurance? Is a defined program for systematic monitoring and evaluation of all aspects of a business. It may include tools such as inspection or testing, monitoring, audit, verification. It also applies to defining performance standards and metrics for an organization and reporting performance against them, in addition to the feedback loop resulting in actions based on data. So it is these two metrics that we have identified. And of course, the element of human factors is about understanding the interaction between the three main factors affecting human performance at work: the job, the individual, and the organization. And these are the related functions or the related metrics that we have mapped. And of course, here you can see the critical alarms per operator hour, and that was understanding alarms, and those are the ones that we picked up on and elaborated more in or during the working group that we are running currently on alarm rationalization. And of course, the assurance that I mentioned earlier, that focuses on two metrics, that is the one that we are planning to work on in the future as the metrics related to audits, especially. And last but not least, we have the element of culture. So establishing and maintaining a positive culture is really complex. And for example, you can have many nice guidance document and literature available in this respect, such as the UK HSE published a lot about culture, and there are other publications available for free to download in certain web pages. So these are the metrics that measure the effectiveness of a culture, especially its willingness to report and learn in a just manner include, such as the following: the open process safety items or number of process safety interactions that occur. Now, when you have these metrics, then you start wondering, all right, but what can I do to them, or how can I implement these metrics? So this is an idea how these metrics can be implemented. So first of all, and this is just a guidance, it is not obligatory, obviously, and it is different from operation to operation, because you are the ones who know the system really well. You know what is missing, and you can map your system against this guidance document and then decide whether it is applicable or not, whether you have more metrics or less metrics, and whether you need to implement all of them in the guidance document or just a few. So it's only up to you. So first of all, determine the scope for implementation, whether there are metrics to be applied across the entire organization, or it is relevant only to one individual facility. And then you start mapping your current metrics to those that are explained in the general guidance document. You may find that you already recording some of those or very, very similar ones. And then determine any gaps between your current metrics and those metrics, and where identify any gaps, determine if you have other metrics to cover. So if they are useful, if you want to continue measuring them or not. And of course, again, I would like to highlight, and apologies for repeating myself, but of course you have to decide what is the intent of measuring that particular metric. And once you identify, once you decided, and then you go for those metrics, then you have to develop, not have to, but you may want to develop an action plan so that you address those gaps and review the implementation section of each metric to see how challenges can be overcome. So continuously monitoring. And this is the part of my presentation when I would like to give the floor to Caroline, because she, as a member of this working group on permit to work system lead process safety metrics, she will explain the content of the guidance that will be published soon. So Caroline, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Susanna. Just trying to get my clicks to work. Here we go. So as Susanna said, the supplementary guide takes the metrics that we had in the overall metric guidance and looks to add some more depth to it. So what we started by doing was looking to understand what was important within a permit, a whole permit system. So we looked to define the whole permit life cycle. As Susanna mentioned, the working groups and the Safety Centre as a whole is made up lots of organisations with lots of different backgrounds. And so what a permit system looks like within different companies will be very slightly different. There'll be different terminology. So we spent quite a lot of time developing this generalised life cycle and a list of typical elements of a permit to work system, so that we had a baseline, a common set of terms to anchor ourselves to. And we did this because we thought it was really important to establish and clarify what's important within the permit to work system. What is the permit to work system trying to manage? What's it trying to achieve? Because by doing that, it allows us to measure the right things, to measure the effectiveness. It's really important to remember that we're not looking to provide guidance on how to create a permit to work system. That's definitely not the intention. All of the generalised sections talking about life cycle and elements is just to make sure that everybody's got a common understanding of what the objectives are. And so there'll be a need to tailor specifically to your situation. Hopefully what we've done is identify the critical aspects, the key things, what's important within a permit to work system, and you'll be able to translate that into your own system. And that's really important because how you actually run your permit to work system will mean that what you develop in terms of data will be quite different. If you're running an electronic system, you'll quite naturally have a whole wealth of data that you can tap into. Whereas if you're using a paper-based system, perhaps actually generating some of that data might be quite a task in itself. So there'll always be this need to weigh up the benefit of generating data and whether the cost involved, whether the time involved in digging into that data is worth it or not. So as I say, we set out to identify what the key elements of a permit to work system are, and we found that by looking at all of the different permits that we researched, that there were some key ingredients. Just click along that. They're probably not surprising, but we identified that these were the most sort of critical ingredients. So again, your system might not look exactly like that, and you might call things slightly different things, but all of these elements were really important to making the permit to work system successful. A proper scope, defining the limits of the system, proper approval process for deviating from it, clear description of the types of permits that you cover, your permit life cycle, the roles, who's involved, specifically what you require in terms of hazard and control identification, details on authorization and monitoring, details specifically on isolation, and then what you expect in terms of the assurance process. So these were what we found, like I say, maybe taking different names, but these were the key ingredients that we thought were essential to a successful permit to work system. Oh, and training and competence, shouldn't forget that one, that's quite key. So we really focused in on the life cycle, and so we developed this simplified permit life cycle to try and organise our thinking into what would make useful metrics to how successful the permits system was working. Again, recognising that everybody's system is going to be slightly different, but this is a typical flow of information. This is key to the document as we take each of these phases and really talk about what's important and how do we monitor how effective each of these life cycle phases are. It's important to remember what the purpose of metrics is. What are you trying to achieve by measuring something? We shouldn't just measure things for measurement's sake. And metrics typically are going to be used to show how well you're doing against an intent, an intended result, in this case usually a safe result. And so it was really important that we mapped out what the intention was at each of the permit to work system phase. The metrics typically, as Susanna went through, are going to be focused on critical risk control systems, and you'll have those for lots of your different systems. In this particular case, the risk control system we're interested in is the permit to work system. And we're looking to measure the inputs and the outputs in terms of, are you delivering what you need to reach that intended result? So it's all looking at what you want to achieve and how you're going to achieve it, breaking it down into those elements so you can identify what you can measure and what is it going to tell you. It's really important that metrics are looking at the effectiveness of the system. in the research that we did, we found that it was quite common for people to develop metrics that were much more like an audit checklist, checking the quality of the detail within the permit, but not necessarily giving you the insight into the effectiveness of the system as a whole. So we tried to step it out to look at the system, and that's why we really based it around each of the phases. So metrics can be used to develop the data. You want to be looking for trends, and you're looking for trends over different timescales. It might be over a long time scale or a short, and you want to be generating that data so that you can compare what does it look like this year versus last year. Are there any patterns in the data that are telling us anything interesting? And they're also a really useful tool for communicating the health of the system to management. So metrics are really useful things if they're designed to actually look for something useful. So this table starts showing you now what the metrics were. So you can see here we've got the life cycle phase down the left-hand side, and the first thing we did was to map out what is the purpose, and that's the intended result that we talked about on the earlier slides. We then tried to drill into that to say, okay, what are the detailed critical aspects that we're trying to deliver? How do we actually achieve success in that area? And we're able to use those to say, okay, what might we be able to measure that will give us some insight into the success of that, and the success of us delivering on those critical aspects will tell us how successful we are in delivering on the purpose of that phase of the life cycle. Now you'll see that obviously if your life cycle phases are slightly different, if the way you actually implement things are slightly different, you'll need to tailor the wording in here to match yours. But we think that we've done it in a generalised way that should really hopefully translate to most situations. So there's lots of metrics in there. Some of them are to show you what stable looks like, and some of them are to show you what does stress on the system look like. For instance, peaks in numbers of permits generated, or changes in the time spent on them can be really valuable information on the strain of the system, but in particular the strain on the people involved in those systems. And you'll see that we've, in most cases, suggested more than one metric for each life cycle phase. And you may not want to use all of them, but we've worked hard to try and develop metrics that are complementary to each other. And so using them together, you can get a better coverage and better information coming back. I'll take just one line through just to make sure that it makes sense what we were trying to do. So if I pick on the suspend, reissue and transfer part of the life cycle, that's an important step to make sure that if the work isn't completed within one shift, there's a transfer and it goes across to an acceptor, a new acceptor for the second part of that work. So critical aspects are within that to make sure that that's a successful handover is that there's documents have been suspended, reissued, transferred, you've followed your process for that handover. If there was an expiry time for the permit, that new time is very clear to those involved. While the job is inactive, if there's any safety implications, it's really important that that's understood. And if there are any changes, that's been managed. There's a management of change within the job. So those were the things that we identified as being quite critical to the safety of that suspension or transfer. So metrics that we thought would give us insight into whether that's being effective and successful were how many permits were being suspended or transferred. And also, on a more negative point, how many were not correctly suspended, reissued or transferred. So these are just measures of quantity that, as you can imagine, over time, you'll get to see a trend and you'll get to see what the baseline is for your organisation and see if things start creeping or becoming differently, indicating if there's any stress, any change to what's going on, and perhaps a need to go and revisit that part of your permit to work system if you start identifying things moving. So why have we done all of this? One of the ideas behind the guidance is that we're hoping to establish some common lead metrics that we can all use. By having common metrics between us in different organisations, it means that we're being consistent in what we're measuring and reporting, which means we can much more easily talk to each other. We're collecting information in the same way, we're comparing like for like, which will allow us to perhaps benchmark between companies and industries. And that will be really useful in allowing us to identify where some people are doing better than others, some people are doing worse than others, and really identify, okay, well, what is it that means that that company, that organisation is doing better in that area? What is the good practice? To really stimulate that sharing of good practice. The other reason that we're doing this is to really, as Susanna said before, not just look for green. So I don't know where this term came from. I think I heard it in a presentation a few years ago and thought it was a really good term. We need to not be made to feel comfortable by a watermelon effect. Everything looking green on the surface, but if we scratched away at it, what would be lurking beneath? So by challenging ourselves, challenging each other, we can look for, are we going deep enough? Are there any blind spots? And really testing that. If we're getting lots of green information back, have we really got a perfect system? A perfect system isn't going to report green perfect all the time. And if it is, then maybe we should question, are we really asking the right questions? And we also need to remember that treating metrics as a target means that it ceases to become a good measure. If we're obsessed with making everything green, we're not challenging ourselves enough. So we hope that this guidance gives lots of food for thought, gives lots of help on how you might go that bit deeper in looking for metrics that help with the effectiveness of your permit to work system.
Thank you, Caroline. And I think that was a great representation of what we have tried to achieve in this particular working group. And this is the time when I would like to acknowledge our members who take all the efforts of the work, and they contributed really effectively to develop this guidance. So I would like to acknowledge the Energy Institute, Origin Energy Limited, RAS Limited, Santos, Snowy Hydro, and Unilever, who was actually the sponsor to this particular working group. So with that, I hope that you got the flavor of what you are expecting or you may expect from this guidance document. And I would like also to give you a couple of other like pieces of information about what we are working at the moment and what work is available already that was published by the iChemist Safety Center. So then you can look around, and apologies for the teeny tiny letters and pictures here, but this is when I have to shrink because we have done so much that I can't fit them in one slide. But anyhow, I wanted to give you the opportunity to look at it. So as I mentioned earlier, that we have published a series of competency framework, a competency guidance document, where you can also analyze what level of competency do you have in your organization. You can map that to your system, what we have presented in the guidance document, and create your own competency framework within your organization, depending on the roles, depending on the levels, depending, so it gives you a matrix formula. And then, of course, the secondary or supplementary guidance document that addresses how to reach that level of competency. So we don't just leave you out in the wood that, yeah, okay, here is the framework, here is the matrix of competency, and then you choose how you want to reach it. No, we give you a really detailed roadmap about how particular you reach that level of competence. And one aspect here is the OHS body of body of knowledge that was published in Australia, and it was a publication for occupational health and safety experts. Then some of the experts realized that something is missing, like a knowledge about process safety, and then the ISC contributed to add 2 chapters to this particular book, and so that identified all the process safety elements that any occupational health and safety experts might need in their work to help them. And of course, the assurance is the ones that we were talking about here. This is the latest one, Engineering and Design. That is a guidance document on applying process safety during concept select phase of a project. I think that's a really, really interesting one for most of you. We publish every 3 months the safety lore, where I identify 2 case studies, description of those case studies, and potential key learning points from them. And the second part is, as you can see here, is the What Can I Do session, where I try to make those recommendations around in a structured way. So what can I do as a manager? What can I do as a supervisor or process safety engineer? And what can I do as an operator? So everybody has a more clear understanding about their roles and responsibilities in terms of what they can do about the situation. And you can find all those safety laws uploaded in PDF document, also in Spanish language, and the MP3 format, where we talk about the law with Trish Kerin, director of the iChemist Safety Center, and I also run webinars. And all of them are on our webpage, so you can watch them again. The case studies are prime products, actually, that try to exclude hindsight bias. So, for instance, when you read any investigation report, then you try to rationalize why it couldn't have happened to you. And then we try to establish these case studies through a story that goes through from the beginning. So we don't give you what happened in the beginning as it is in the investigation report, but we start the story where it originally started, and we guide you through what happened. And as the story unfolds itself, you have to make some decisions. And this is, we think, and our members already told us that it is a great example of experiencing any accidents that have no consequences in real life, because you just experience it through an online system or through a presentation. Now, these case studies are not free because that is the essence of our products, and so they are available for our member companies for free with facilitation by me or Trish, depending on geographical location, and also they can be purchased either individually or all of them. The education one is, as I mentioned, that we work together with universities, and this is a crucial one. So the learning outcomes and the safety management systems of laboratories are potential prime examples of these educational guidance document for undergraduate students, for universities, and those actually address some sort of like a wish list that an industry wants from fresh graduates to have on process safety. And also it matches what the universities can add to the picture, what is their curricula and how they can contribute to that wish list, or is it reasonable or it is not. And then we also identify that laboratories within universities, research facilities, and so on, they have to, or it is really advisable to follow safety management system elements. And that's why, based on the guidance document that identifies all these elements, we published a case study, such as those that I mentioned earlier, but it is for free for everyone. So everybody can practice that, how safety management systems elements can be applied and implemented in laboratories, so that you can feel free and find on our website. And of course, we give a forward thinking about the future. So that is the publication around process safety for the 21st century that gives also ideas and action plans for different part of the society, whether it's for the operators, whether it's for academia, regulators, or society, so that everybody has a role in process safety and what is it that they can do about improvement of improving that process safety. It is at the IChemE website, so where you click on the www.icheme.org, then you have Safety Center, so you can find all the information, relevant information there. I thought I added, I added the website link to that slide. For some reason it doesn't show up, so apologies for that. We tried to give you the flavor of what we were doing in this working group, and hopefully that you will enjoy the guidance document when it will be published just less than in 1 month. Hopefully, it's really at the final stage to be published. And now I would like to thank you for your kind attention and take questions. So. Thank you. You already asked some questions. Some of you mentioned there is guidance already available from the HSC, both on process safety leading metrics, which is the HSG 254, and also on permit to work systems, HSG 250. Given this guidance already exists and is recognized by the HSC, why do we think more guidance is required rather than using what already exists? Now, that is a really valid, really interesting question, and thank you so much for asking that. Yes, indeed, and we took into consideration very well this very good guidance document published by the UK HSC. We always follow their work. That is important for us. Not only that, but also the Australian standards and all the worldwide application. Now, the UK HSC guidance document may be really valuable within the UK, but we have to extend the scope for all industries all over the world, and plus to give more specific details about those potential metrics. So going into the details about those metrics that can be applied in practice. So we built upon the HSC guidance document, but we also identified further details about the practical application of the metrics, and identified all together with our company members to identify more work permit metrics that could be informative and important for the operation. And the good news is that you can use either. So you can use the ISC guidance document, you can use the HSC guidance document, or any other publications. It's okay, because as I mentioned earlier, it's really important. It's not competitive. It's something that is in addition to the already published guidance documents. I don't know if Caroline, you would like to add something to this?
I think you covered that, Susanna. Yeah, the two things I was going to say is that it's not, it is complementary guidance, so it should be used to help implement what the UK HSC is asking for, but also it's really that practical aspect that we've tried to build in, really harnessing the experience of all the member groups.
Thank you, Caroline. Another comment: in review and verify and issue and accept, a critical step is an independent check of the isolation scheme plan in place relative to the permit to work. Okay, thank you for that valuable comment. I try to get to the next question. It looks like some of the metrics will be proportional to the size of the organization or the operation. Have you identified specific metrics that are comparable between companies, such as XYZ as a percentage of total metrics or XYZ per area authority? We haven't benchmarked in that respect. Caroline, would you like to add something to this particular question?
Yeah, I guess the thing is that that's kind of future. We need people to start using the metrics to allow us to start doing that benchmarking. So we haven't done that yet. That would be next phases, future work.
Yeah, hopefully you all will be volunteering once you ask this question, I hope. So there is another comment I would like to address here. So thank you for the sharing. Unlike lagging indicators, which are clearly tracking stuff you don't want to happen, for example, no fires, leaks, or injuries, leading indicators are to some extent limited by the experience and imagination of the people who come up with them. For example, we just learned that there are 12 sub-metrics under permit to work alone. Oh, you counted that. I haven't counted that we have 12 sub-metrics, so that's good. What I have struggled with in the past is, are all 21 leading indicators created equal, or are some more equal than others? Another struggle is that there is usually a time lag effect, as not doing say process safety audits for a while will likely not immediately result in a process safety incident. My question therefore is, has there been any research to check statistically the correlation of each leading metric with the lagging metrics, which are what we want to prevent, and taking into account the time lag effect? This is important, as if I collect data on all 21 metrics and find that I am weak on a few of them, and if I have limited resources, which one or two should I focus on to maximize effectiveness? That's a really, really interesting suggestion, because that gives an idea about how to prioritize measuring those metrics and whether we can use the information. And of course, yes, absolutely, you use the information coming from the lagging metrics part because there is a correlation between the two. So when you fix something on the lagging part, then it will fix inevitably something on the leading part, and vice versa. So that is a really close correlation. We haven't done any statistical analysis though, but I would like to take this suggestion further, and I would like to thank you for this idea, because we haven't addressed this so far. I hope that I managed to. Yeah, Caroline, please.
It's a really interesting point. I think it could be quite difficult, because I imagine that the importance of different risk control systems will be different for different organisations. So if you're carrying out lots of activities using permit to work, or whether you're sort of a more stable running and it's done via risk assessment and standard procedure. So I think it would be really interesting, but also quite challenging to do that. Just an observation, I think.
Yes, but it's really good, because especially the time lag. So when do you start seeing any results in your operation from the leading part, so that you have what you have implemented that actually has any effect on your whole system? So thank you again. Thank you so much for all of you. We don't have any further questions. Thank you for your kind attention. And as I mentioned earlier, the webinar will be uploaded to our forums, and I will also share on LinkedIn. You can find both of us, and you can find the iChemist Safety Center and RAS as well on LinkedIn. If you want to keep in touch with us, please feel free to send emails or find us at any other forum. Thank you.
Thanks.